फ्री है।
Okay. We are reading the chapter The Adventure. Before we start today, I want to remind you of everything that we studied before. ठीक है, अभी तक जो पढ़ा है उसको रिकॉल कर लेते हैं जल्दी से. We know that this story is about Professor Gangadhar Pant Gaitonde. He is a historian, right? He has some investigations to do, which is why he takes the Jijamata Express. The train is called Jijamata Express, and he moves from Pune to Bombay to find out what happened in history that changed the Bombay that he's seeing from the Bombay that he knows. वो बॉम्बे सिटी को ऑलरेडी जानते हैं बट ही इज ट्राइंग टू फाइंड आउट व्हाई द बॉम्बे दैट ही सीइंग इज डिफरेंट बिकॉज ही सीज ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी हेडक्वार्टर्स है ना, हमने वो देखी थी बिल्डिंग, बहुत ही ग्रैंड बिल्डिंग, इम्पोजिंग बिल्डिंग जो कि हेडक्वार्टर्स है ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी की. एंड ही सीज दैट दिस कंपनी इज नॉट जस्ट अलाइव बट इट्स फ्लरिशिंग, right? And he wants to find out why this Bombay is different. And we see that he goes to a library and he goes through 5 volumes of his history books. 5 volumes of history books पढ़ते हैं वो to find out the event where the course of history changed. And he finds out it is the Battle of Panipat, right? It is the Battle of Panipat where history took a different turn because instead of losing, the Marathas won the Battle of Panipat. मराठास जीत गए थे बैटल ऑफ पानीपत. और इसीलिए जो आज का बॉम्बे है, जो ऑल्टरनेट यूनिवर्स का बॉम्बे है, दैट इज डिफरेंट फ्रॉम द बॉम्बे दैट द प्रोफेसर न्यू. Okay, so when we last read, we saw him in the library. He was reading his books, and the last we saw, he had left the library, right? अब हम आगे बढ़ते हैं. We're starting with a new section. Let me start reading. He found a guest house to stay in and had a frugal meal. ठीक है, वी नो, हमने ऑलरेडी पढ़ा है प्रोफेसर के बारे में दैट ही वाज नॉट कंसर्न्ड अबाउट वेयर ही वुड स्टे. उनकी फितरत नहीं थी, उनकी कैरेक्टरिस्टिक नहीं थी कि अगर वो कहीं ट्रैवल करें तो वो चिंता करें कि वो कहाँ रहेंगे, कहाँ ठहरेंगे, कहाँ खाएंगे. इसकी चिंता उनको नहीं रहती थी. इसलिए लाइब्रेरी से निकल के ही उन्होंने एक गेस्ट हाउस ढूंढ लिया, राइट, जहाँ पे वो रह सकते थे, वेर ही स्टेड. एंड ही हैड अ फ्रूगल मील. फ्रूगल, frugal is something which does not cost a lot, which is cheap. तो इसका मतलब है प्रोफेसर ने एक चीप मील खाई, एक मीगर, एक स्कैंटी मील खाई. He then set out for a stroll towards the Azad Maidan. A stroll is a leisurely walk. जैसे खाने के बाद आप टहलने के लिए, चहल करने के लिए निकल जाते हैं, that is a stroll. तो ऐसे ही हमारे प्रोफेसर ने खाना खाया and he went out for a walk towards Azad Maidan. Azad Maidan is the name of this ground. एक बहुत बड़ा सा ground है जिसका नाम है Azad Maidan. In the Maidan, he found a throng moving towards a pandal. A throng in Hindi would be a jhund, as in a group, a large group of people, right? So professor ने देखा that a large group of people was moving towards a pandal. Pandal is you must know what a pandal is, right? During Durga Puja celebrations, आप pandal hopping करते होगे. You must have seen these shops selling food or clothes, things like that. तो a pandal is a temporary structure जिसको किसी ओकेजन के लिए, किसी इवेंट के लिए बनाया जाता है स्पेशली, राइट? हमारे प्रोफेसर जो हैं, he saw that a group of people was moving towards a pandal, and so he concludes a lecture was to take place. So the professor sees that this group of people is walking towards a pandal, and he realizes, oh, okay, a lecture is going to take place. Force of habit took Professor Gaitonde towards the pandal. This means that Professor Gaitonde often used to go to Azad Maidan. उनकी आदत थी, इसलिए force of habit took him towards the pandal. वो पंडाल की तरफ walk करने लग गए. The lecture was in progress, although people kept coming and going. The lecture was in progress means that the lecture was ongoing. The lecture was in progress. The lecture was on, although people kept coming and going. Sana, you can please do not disturb. You can switch off the whiteboard that you're using. Okay, stop using it. The lecture was taking place, but people were coming and going. आ रहे थे, जा रहे थे. But Professor Gaitonde was not looking at the audience. Audience क्या होता है? Can someone tell me what is an audience? An audience is in Hindi we can say an audience is the darshak. People who watch a program, for example, if you go to watch a movie, right, you will be sitting in your seats and watching a movie, so you will be the audience, right, because you're watching the movie. Okay, तो हमारे जो प्रोफेसर हैं वो ऑडियंस को नहीं देख रहे थे, वो लोगों को नहीं देख रहे थे, वो क्या कर रहे थे, ही वाज स्टेयरिंग एट द प्लेटफॉर्म, स्टेयरिंग एज इन टू लुक एट समथिंग विद इंटेंसिटी, विद ग्रेट फोकस, ही वाज स्टेयरिंग एट द प्लेटफॉर्म. प्लेटफॉर्म इज अ स्ट्रक्चर विच इज रेज्ड, है ना, जब आप किसी हॉल में जाते होंगे आपने देखा होगा एक प्लेटफॉर्म होता है, एक रेज्ड जगह जहाँ पे चेयर्स रखी होती हैं, जहाँ पे लेक्चरर्स बैठते हैं, जहाँ से लोग बोलते हैं, राइट, दैट इज अ प्लेटफॉर्म. So he was staring at the platform as if mesmerized, as in mesmerized means hypnotized, right? He saw the platform and he was mesmerized by it. Students, stop using your pen. Erase this. This is causing disturbance. Stop writing on the board. Erase what you've written quickly. There was a table and a chair, but the latter was unoccupied. Okay, I will quickly explain what latter and former mean. Latter is the opposite of former. I'll quickly write this down for you. Latter, former, and latter. Former. Table is former, chair is latter. Why? Because former is something that comes before and latter is something that comes after. तो जो चीज पहले लिखी गई है वो होगी फॉर्मर, और जो चीज बाद में लिखी गई है जो कि चेयर है यहाँ पे, दैट इज लैटर. तो अगर मैं कहती द फॉर्मर वॉज अनऑक्यूपाइड, दैट वुड मीन आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट द टेबल, मतलब मैं टेबल की बात करी. बट इफ आई से द लैटर वॉज अनऑक्यूपाइड, इट मीन्स आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट द चेयर. ठीक है, क्योंकि the chair comes later, the chair comes after the table, इसलिए latter means the chair. Okay, the latter was unoccupied. Unoccupied means vacant, it was not in use, मतलब जो chair थी उसके ऊपर कोई बैठा नहीं था. Got it? The presidential chair unoccupied. Do you notice the exclamation mark here? आप notice कर रहे हो exclamation mark लिखा है यहाँ पे. This means that that a professor was astonished by it. He was shocked by it. The presidential chair unoccupied hai, right? What is the presidential chair? A presiding officer is someone who's in charge, who leads a discussion, who leads a lecture series. So, जिस chair पे वो बैठते हैं, that is called the presidential chair. And professor sees that this chair is unoccupied. इस chair में कोई नहीं बैठा. The sight stirred him to the depths. Stirred him. Yes. Sana, what's going on?
तो फेल हो है.
Sana, what's going on? Sana, mute yourself. Okay. The sight stirred him to the depth. Stirred him to the depth means it moved him. गहराई तक हिला देना, है ना. Stirred him to the depths मतलब उसको शॉक लगा उसको देख के. Like a piece of iron attracted to a magnet, he swiftly moved towards the chair. Right? He was attracted to the chair, and the comparison drawn is between a magnet and an iron. It was like the chair was a magnet. चेयर हमारे प्रोफेसर को इतनी जोर से खींच रही थी, इतनी जोर से अट्रैक्ट कर रही थी. इट वाज लाइक इट वाज अ मैग्नेट एंड प्रोफेसर गाय टोंडे वाज अ पीस ऑफ आयरन. वी नो दैट मैग्नेट एंड अ पीस ऑफ आयरन अट्रैक्ट ईच अदर, राइट. इन दोनों के बीच में मैग्नेटिज्म होता है. तो इट वाज लाइक ही वाज अट्रैक्टेड टुवर्ड्स द चेयर. ही स्विफ्टली मूव टुवर्ड्स द चेयर, मतलब ही क्विकली, स्विफ्टली इज फास्ट, ही क्विकली मूव्ड टुवर्ड्स द चेयर, वो चेयर की तरफ चल पड़े. The speaker stopped in mid-sentence, too shocked to continue. The speaker. We know that the lecture was going on, है ना? The lecture was already in progress, and the speaker stopped mid-sentence. The speaker was so shocked, he was too shocked to complete. वो जो sentence बोल रहे थे, he didn't even finish the sentence. He was so shocked. He stopped mid-sentence. बीच sentence में रुक गए. But the audience soon found voice. Soon found voice. This means that the audience began talking. Find voice is to speak. The audience started speaking. And what did the audience say? These things. Vacate the chair. This lecture series has no chairperson. Away from the platform, mister. The chair is symbolic, don't you know? All of these things are the things that the audience said. The first thing is vacate the chair. Vacate is to empty. So the audience is saying, empty the chair, do not sit in the chair, stand up from the chair. This lecture series has no chairperson. This means that the presiding officer does not exist for this lecture series. There is no chairperson. There are only speakers in this lecture series. सिर्फ जो लेक्चरर्स होंगे वो आएंगे अपना लेक्चर देंगे, कोई भी चेयरपर्सन नहीं होगा, कोई भी प्रिसाइडिंग ऑफिसर नहीं होगा. अवे फ्रॉम द प्लेटफॉर्म मिस्टर. तो जो ऑडियंस है वो कह रहे हैं कि प्लेटफॉर्म से दूर हो जाओ, गेट अवे फ्रॉम द प्लेटफॉर्म. किसको कह रहे हैं? हु इज द मिस्टर हियर? द मिस्टर इज प्रोफेसर Gaitonde, right? Because he has moved towards the chair, he sat in the chair, and the audience is not happy with it. The audience want him to go away. The chair is symbolic, don't you know? Symbolic is something which is only which is not literal, which is only metaphorical, which is only symbolic, right? Actual में नहीं, it's not for real. For example, जो chair रखी हुई है वहां पे, it's only symbolic, it's not for a real person. इस lecture series का कोई chair person नहीं है, सिर्फ एक chair रखी हुई है. ये प्रतीकात्मक, symbolic is प्रतीकात्मक, सिर्फ प्रतीक के नाम पे रखी है लेकिन यूज नहीं की जाएगी. ओके, तो फिर we are told what Professor Gaitonde thinks about this. What nonsense! Whoever heard of a public lecture without a presiding dignitary? Professor Gaitonde went to the mic and gave vent to his views. So the professor thinks this is complete nonsense. This is illogical, right? Nonsense is illogical, does not make sense. Whoever heard of a public lecture without a presiding dignitary? A dignitary is a very important person, right? A very influential person, a very reputed person whose opinions matter, right? उनकी जो opinions हैं, उनकी जो views हैं, वो बहुत ही प्रभावशाली होते हैं और इसलिए वो बहुत important है. And presiding dignitary is the person, a very important person who leads the discussion, who leads the lecture, right? So the professor, our Professor Gaitonde, he is shocked that this lecture series does not even have a presiding dignitary. It does not even have a chairperson. So what did Professor Gaitonde do? Professor Gaitonde went to the mic, वो mic तक गए, and he gave vent to his views. Gave vent to vent means to speak, to express, to tell what you think, right? So Professor Gaitonde जाते हैं mic पे और उनको जो बोलना होता है, उनके जो विचार होते हैं, उन विचारों को प्रकट करते हैं. क्या होते हैं उनके विचार? वो बोलते हैं, Ladies and gentlemen, an unchaired lecture is like Shakespeare's Hamlet without the Prince of Denmark. And then he continues, let me tell you. तो वो क्या कह रहे हैं? वो ऑडियंस को कहते हैं, लेडीज एंड जेंटलमैन, कह रहे हैं, an unchaired lecture, a lecture without a chairperson is like Shakespeare's Hamlet. Shakespeare is a playwright, he was a playwright, a very very famous playwright, और उनका बहुत ही फेमस प्ले है हैमलेट. ठीक है? जो प्रिंस ऑफ डेनमार्क होते हैं ना, डेनमार्क इज अ प्लेस, उनका जो प्रिंस होता है, शहजादा होता है, उनका नाम होता है हैमलेट. So Hamlet is the Prince of Denmark. So Hamlet is so important to the play that the play itself has been called Hamlet. है ना? Hamlet जो इंसान है, उनके नाम पर ही play को रख दिया है because the character is so important to the play. So Professor Gaitonde is saying that an unchaired lecture is like Hamlet without Hamlet. क्या कोई play पढ़ सकता है Hamlet जिसके अंदर Hamlet ही ना हो? It's impossible, right? So he's saying that a lecture without a chairperson is also impossible to conduct. ऐसा हो ही नहीं सकता. This is complete nonsense. This is illogical. आगे. But the audience was in no mood to listen. Tell us nothing. We are sick of remarks from the chair, of word of thanks, of long introductions. लेकिन जो audience थी, जो दर्शक थे, they did not want to listen. They did not want to listen to what Professor Gaitonde had to say at all. They told Professor Gaitonde, tell us nothing. We do not want to hear anything. We are sick of remarks from the chair. हम तंग आ चुके हैं किससे? Chairperson के remarks से, vote of thanks से, लंबी लंबी introduction से. So these are all formal proceedings that take place during a lecture series, है ना? तो जो ऑडियंस है वो कह रहे हैं कि हमें इन फॉर्मेलिटीज में नहीं पढ़ना. वी डू नॉट लाइक दीज फॉर्मेलिटीज एट ऑल. दीज आर वेरी वेरी बोरिंग प्रोसीडिंग्स एंड वी डू नॉट लाइक टू अटेंड सच लेक्चर्स. We only want to listen to the speaker. हमें सिर्फ जो lecture दे रहे हैं speaker उनका सुनना है. We do not want to listen to the chairperson at all. They explain, we only want to listen to the speaker. We abolished the old customs long ago. Abolish means to stop something, to ban something. And customs are the practices that you ritually do, which are common to a place. So, lecture series mein, it is customary, it is common that there would be a chairperson to lead the lecture. Lekin the audience says that we banned this custom. So, this custom of having a chairperson in a lecture series was banned. It no longer existed. Keep the platform empty, please. The audience says, keep the platform empty. Do not sit in the chair, vacate the chair, go away from here. But what happens? But Gangadhar Pant had the experience of speaking at 999 meetings and had faced the Pune audience at its most hostile. He kept on talking. But our Professor Gangadhar Pant, had the experience of speaking at 999 meetings. So we already know that our Professor Gangadhar Pant is a historian, right? He has even written history books, and he's a very, very experienced person. In fact, he has spoken at 999 meetings. इतनी सारी meetings में ये lecture दे चुके हैं, which means that this meeting is his 1000th meeting. This is his 1000th address, है ना? And he had faced the Pune audience at its most hostile. He had experience and he had even prior experience of a hostile audience. Hostile is someone who is not friendly, who is not friendly towards you, who has a strong dislike for you, someone who does not like you, right? So he had experience of speaking at a lot of places at a lot of times, and he had even experienced an audience which was not friendly, which did not encourage him to speak. So, because he had experience, he continued talking. But what happens? He soon became a target of a shower of tomatoes, eggs, and other objects. तो क्या हो रहा है हमारे प्रोफेसर के साथ? The audience is so fed up of him that they begin throwing tomatoes, eggs, and other objects. They start throwing टमाटर, अंडे और बाकी चीजें उनके ऊपर फेंकने लगते हैं because they want the professor to go down, get down from the platform. But does our professor agree? Does our professor listen to them? No. He kept on trying valiantly to correct this sacrilege. He kept on trying valiantly, means he acted very bravely. Valiant is a brave person. So, very bravely, with a lot of courage, he kept on trying to convince them to correct this sacrilege. Sacrilege is something which is a violation of something sacred. Sacred समझते हैं आप लोग? Sacred is something which is very important, which is very pure, important to religion. So having not having a chairperson is something which is such a big violation, which is so wrong that it is almost a sacrilege. It is something which is very impure. So our professor valiantly, very bravely, courageously, he faced the tomatoes, he faced the eggs, but continued talking. He continued to correct the wrong. He tried to convince the audience that you must have a chairperson. वो बार बार कन्विंस करने की कोशिश कर रहे थे ऑडियंस को कि नो नो अ लेक्चर सीरीज कैन नॉट बी विदाउट अ चेयरपर्सन, यू मस्ट हैव अ चेयरपर्सन. तो फिर क्या होता है? फाइनली द ऑडियंस स्वॉर्म्ड टू द स्टेज टू इजेक्ट हिम बॉडीली. अ स्वॉर्म, अगर आप बीज के बारे में बात करते हो तो बीज का कलेक्टिव नाउन इज अ स्वॉर्म ऑफ बीज, राइट? Bees are very small insects, and if you see a huge group of them, you say this is a swarm of bees. So, like a swarm of bees, the people, the audience, they collected and walked towards the stage. Why? They wanted to eject him bodily. Eject means to throw out. They wanted to physically throw him out, to bodily throw it out. Throw him out. तो उसको पकड़कर प्रोफेसर गंगाधर पंत को पकड़कर वो फेंकना चाहते थे स्टेज से. फिर क्या होता है? एंड इन द क्राउड गंगाधर पंत वॉज नो वेयर टू बी सीन. इतना ज्यादा क्राउड था, देयर वर सो मेनी पीपल दैट अ प्रोफेसर गंगाधर पंत was lost. He was lost in the crowd and no one could find out where he is. Okay? Class, did you understand till here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I will continue with just one more paragraph and then we'll stop for today. We're starting with a new section. That is all I have to tell Rajendra. All I know is that I was found in the Azad Maidan in the morning. So now we know that our Professor Gangadhar Pant, he is talking to his friend Rajendra. And he completes his narrative. जो जो उनको बोलना होता है वो सारी चीजें बोलते हैं. सब कुछ खत्म करके अपना narrative पूरा समझा के he says, this is all I have to tell. This is all I have to tell you. All I know is that I was found in the Azad Maidan in the morning. All I know is मुझे सिर्फ यही पता है. What does he know? That I was found in the Azad Maidan in the morning. The next morning he was found in the Azad Maidan in the same ground. But I was back in the world I am familiar with. Familiar is something which is known to you, which you know already, right? He was back in the world, which means that he was in some other world, right? He was in Bombay, but this Bombay was a different Bombay. ये Bombay अलग था from the Bombay the professor knew. But when he woke up in the Azad Maidan the next morning, he was back in the Bombay. वो अपने world में वापस आ गए थे. He was back there. Now, where exactly did I spend those 2 days when I was absent from here? This is a question. वो पूछ रहे राजेंद्र से मैं कहाँ था 2 दिन जब मैं यहाँ नहीं था तो मैं कहाँ था Where was I when I was absent from here? Rajendra was dumbfounded by the narrative. Dumbfounded means to be amazed, to be extremely surprised. In Hindi, we would say hakka bakka reh jana, right? So, जो राजेंद्र हैं उनके friend, he heard our professor's narrative, right? And he was amazed by what the professor had to tell him. It took him a while to reply, right? The professor, the professor's account, the professor's story amazed him, and therefore he took a little while to reply because he was recollecting his thoughts. He was thinking, he was trying to put things together to understand what is it that had happened. How can this happen? This is not possible. Is it possible that different worlds exist? No, right? Is an alternate universe present at least in our present day and age? No, right? This is something from science fiction for us. This is something which cannot exist. So Rajendra was so amazed, was so surprised. Therefore, he took some time. He tried to think. He tried to understand. समझने की कोशिश कर रहे थे कि कैसा हुआ ये पॉसिबल कैसे है. So Rajendra then asks, Professor, before, just prior to your collision with the truck, what were you doing? जो राजेंद्र हैं वो हमारे प्रोफेसर से पूछते हैं just prior means before your collision with the truck, what were you doing? अच्छा, so now we have a hint about how this could have happened. We understand that there is a collision with the truck. Professor Gaitonde was hit by a truck. Collision is when two things collide with each other, hit each other very strongly, very violently. जैसे accident होता है ना, accident में two vehicles collide, two vehicles strike each other, है ना, hit each other. So we know that our Professor Gaitonde, he collided with a truck. He had an accident with the truck, and this is why this is that event that led him to enter into another world. ठीक है? So Rajendra is asking, just before your collision, just before your accident, what were you doing? क्या कर रहे थे आप? So our professor says, I was thinking of the catastrophe theory and its implications for history. हमारे प्रोफेसर जवाब देते हैं, मैं कैटास्ट्रफी थ्योरी के बारे में सोच रहा था and its effect, its implications on history. ठीक है? We will continue this tomorrow.